All right, good evening, folks. How's it going out there? Welcome back here to a Monday night. Hope everyone had a wonderful Labor Day weekend out there. Not too bad here. Spent a little bit of time around the redwoods there in Northern California, also along the ocean in Northern California as well for the weekend. So kind of nice and relaxing. Latest activity shows a 2.5 earthquake there in the red flag somewhere out here. Looks like the Chile area. There in the Peru-Chile Trench, also some earthquake activity into Alaska. So that's where we're going to start up here in Alaska. Got a decent swarm of events up here along the Aleutian Trench. Now this area historically can see some large earthquake activity. Well, large is an understatement, right? So we need to use that word mega quake. And this subduction zone here, look at that trench here. That's a major subduction zone in interaction between the Pacific and the North American plate, capable of above 8.0 and 9.0 earthquakes out here. The last decent 9.0 earthquake was back in 1964, I believe is right. And we've seen obviously a number of 7s and 8s since then, but specifically in this area, right where the swarm is occurring eastward along that plate boundary, historically is lacking earthquake activity in terms of recent movement. So I'm keeping a close eye on this area. The last earthquake to show up here is a 4.4 earthquake in the area. Let me see. I thought we had a little bit of earthquake activity previous to that, or at least after that. So nothing's happened since noon. That's a little odd, right? I mean, how does earthquake activity halt at noon? So I'm a little uncertain on if that is accurate or not. Either way, we got 13 earthquakes of some decent magnitudes out here, including a 5.0, a couple 4s in there as well. I don't think this is just a main sequence event here. I think this is just a little swarm along the subduction zone. There's some further activity here, 31 miles deep underneath this area, due into the subduction zone here, but underneath this area of the Old Harbor, Alaska area. So that tells me right there that this region is quite strained. In fact, if you look at the last 30 days here, we've seen some previous activity up here at the surface level. Notice these white quakes here on the Pacific side of the plate boundary within the last 30 days, with subsequent activity down into the subduction zone here. That about 7 miles or so into the subduction zone is obviously within that locked area where we build up a lot of strain out here. So I am watching this area closely. Roughly where this activity is occurring right now, eastward up into the Gulf of Alaska for some further larger activity. They don't call this area the Alaska Aleutian megathrust area for no reason at all. This is a major area that can see 9.0 earthquakes or higher. And it's one of the more lengthier subduction zones out here. And we've seen a number of earthquakes out here in the last couple of years, and 8.1 in 2021, a little bit further east here, or west, along the Aleutian Trench here, and the more recent 7.3 in the area of the Sandpoint, Alaska area as well. But all this shuffling around here of the Pacific plate has added further strain out here across this area. And I tell you what, it's a dandy of a region for some big earthquake activity. So we do have to watch that closely with that swarm going on there earlier today. Actually, there's quite a bit of earthquake activity here in the last 24 hours, scooting up through the Cook Inlet area, up through Anchorage, even up around the Fairbanks area to the west here. Got a lot of earthquake activity stirring up, so we do need to watch that region. Also some newer activity here around that middle point boundary with a 4.7 within the last 2 hours or so. So I am watching this area of the North American plate for some further larger adjustment. Another new, let's see when that struck here, 2037, 2032. Wow. Okay, so 5.3 Izu Trench area, pretty shallow earthquake activity, about 8:32 West Coast time. a few minutes later was that 4.7 up here across the Aleutian Trench middle point boundary up here. So, man, when things move, they move. And we do have to watch this area. I do think we need to watch regions of the Aleutian Trench here. Also, the rest of the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench down across the Nankai Trough here for some larger activity. There's just too many signs here pointing towards this area recently. It's very visible out here, northern area of the Pacific Ring of Fire. There's that shallow, super shallow 5.3 indicating some strain out there across the Izu Trench. Areas of the Taiwan region southward, bunch of 3s and 4s, but that's common on any given day. If you look at the earthquake 3D globe, this is what you see. It's nothing new. But areas that you don't see that type of activity is up here across the northern area of the Pacific Plate, and that's quite active. Pretty quiet out there across New Zealand. Not for sure what's going on there, but most of the adjustments going on across the northern hemisphere. A little bit of activity around the Gulf of California, 4.8, and a couple other earthquakes down there. USGS is reporting that earthquake activity there with a 4.8 earlier this afternoon, about 6 miles deep. Pretty shallow earthquake activity here. And, of course, there's some further activity showing up there on the earthquake 3D globe. Let's go ahead and check out Southern California, which has been somewhat active here today. This is the 2.5 model and above. We got 5 earthquakes out there. The latest, a 3.7, up along the creeping section of the San Andreas Fault. A couple other 2s down here across the southern end of the locked area of the San Andreas Fault. Right now, in the last hour, we do have a little 0.2 out around the Running Springs area. But it is looking quite active out here with a number of earthquakes scattered out and about. This is a crunch zone, so to speak, here. There's a lot of buildup of stress out here along the San Andreas Fault. And, you know, this area has not seen a large event in quite a while. More specifically, the extreme southern end, over 300 years down here. The last decent event here across this area was 1856, 1956, yeah. So 1856 here across the southern end, but it's primed. You know, it's the bad thing is here, and I tell you what, I see so many comments out here on my videos, and some negative, some positive. There's so many that are positive, and I try to heart and at least comment back on those. And if you're lucky, I'll pin one of them. Some of those out there, and I'm going to mention it here, that one of the viewers out here mentioned, how come I never answer their questions about something, you know? And I don't know, I get hundreds of comments out here on videos, and sometimes even more. So I don't go through every single comment. But if you have a specific question here, and if you've been paying attention to my videos, the best way to reach me, and it's almost guaranteed, is to send me an email. All right, earthmastermail@gmail.com is my email, and you can, you know, it comes through automatically on my phone. And if I'm not busy, I will read it and answer you back if you have a specific question. But, you know, don't downplay that I am not answering questions out there, because I'm not seeing them. You know, there's literally hundreds of comments here on my videos, so it's hard to respond to every single person out there. I can't do it. I just can't. So, you know, again, earthmastermail@gmail.com. So there's the activity along the creeping section of the San Andreas Fault. Pretty prominent out here. You can see it. It you know, doesn't take a geophysic type of scientist to see the activity out here. Quite a few 1s, quite a few 2s. The largest, a 3.2. That means that the plate boundary here is on the move. We do need to watch this area here along the Parkfield segment of the San Andreas Fault, okay? It's absent of earthquake activity, but there's good reason, and that's because strain is building up out here. This area of the San Andreas Fault normally sees 6.0 earthquakes or above every 20 to 22 years. And the last one was 2004. So we're looking at 21 years. So this segment right here, the Parkfield section, But when this is on the move here, the creeping section, that means that things are further straining out there. The plate boundary out here, it's no joke. It's nothing to mess around with here, folks. We're talking about at least an 8.0 out here. Probably, more than likely, for the next event along the San Andreas Fault. And there's a reason behind that, is because this southern segment here, the extreme southern segment here of the San Andreas Fault, did not rupture with the last southern branch of the San Andreas Fault rupture, which was a 7.5 up here. So that area, fairly well primed. This area, fairly well primed as well. And it's overdue. The whole thing is overdue here, but don't be complacent. Don't be that person that says, well, I've been hearing about this since I was a kid. You're lying. It's crazy the amount of comments I get out here, folks. You're lying. You're a liar. Anyway, it is what it is. You know, people are people. Yeah, I think there was a Depeche Mode song back in the 80s about that. People are people. You know, they're just going to... It is what it is. You know, everyone's got an opinion. What I do know is that geology is about the study of time. For one, the right time is all about the plate tectonics and everything else that goes along with it. That's the main source of it, time. Just think of how much time has passed out here since the last big rupture. That's coming. It is coming, I guarantee you, as far as Southern California goes. And I can point out 10 different locations out here that are well overdue across the globe. Nevada suspiciously has just died down of earthquake activity out there. I don't know if anyone's seen any earthquake activity across the Nevada station there, but it just came to a halt as far as that decent earthquake activity goes. One little earthquake there on the Barrett station of Southern California. That's going to be down here. I think that's going to be this earthquake right here. 1.4 at 2300. 7 minutes ago. Let's see. 7 minutes ago, exactly at 0600. Excuse me. 23 is going to be the 11 o'clock time period here for my time, California. But that's a general time here, the UTC time at 06. So that's a little 1.4 in Southern California, just off the Elsinore Fault there. Nothing big going on there for now, but I guarantee you, when it happens, I think we'll know about it. Northern California, not so much going on. We got this one earthquake here earlier this afternoon, a 2.4. Cascadia subduction zone quiet. One earthquake outside of Mount Hood. But let's go double check and see what's going on here. Tremor map here. 107 epicenters of tremor, mainly down here across Northern California. That's a decent amount down there across the southern end. Let's go check out the volcano activity starting here at Mount Hood. Let's see if we can spot the earthquake out there struck. It's going to be a little 0.3 right before 7 o'clock or so. What time is that? 1853. 1853 is going to be... Oh, there's the red line. 1853, where are you? Right there? This is... That's not 1853 here, so where's that earthquake that's striking? No, well, maybe here. That's going to be this one right here, it looks like. Notice that blue line? That would probably be 1853. A little spike, but it does look like there's some other earthquake activity out there. You know, there's one thing I've noticed is that there's an increase in earthquake activity here ever since that 8.8 there in the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench across Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens. Mount Hood looks fairly active as well. Those are earthquakes out there. How come those didn't get reported out here this weekend? See all those quakes out there? That S wave out there is one of the larger events out there in the last 24 hours. I think that's going to be the Alaska earthquake about 4 o'clock this morning, which would match that 5-pointer. So, but we do have earthquake activity happening out there. Interestingly, that they reported the little 0.3. Let's go check out Mount Rainier real quick. See what we have going. Well, Glacier. Let's go see what's going on up there across the Glacier Park. Glacier Peak. That's definitely a well-defined earthquake there across the area. There's the S wave. Couple earthquakes out there. Looks like. I don't know. You know, it almost seems like things are stirring up across the volcanoes. Here's Mount Rainier. But don't panic, right? Well, you don't want to panic until things really start getting real. There's a couple earthquakes out there in the last hour or so. Maybe some of those are ice quakes. A couple earthquakes there in the last 24 hours. Or this is probably 36 hours. There's an event. That's an error right here. But there's some earthquake activity. You know, it's still occurring out there across Mount Rainier. Mount St. Helens. We'll go over here at the summit area and double check this, see what we have. You know, I'm not blind here. I don't think any of us are blind. And if you are, well, I'm pointing out here that there's still some earthquake activity there across the Mount St. Helens area. These are earthquakes here. Those are definitely earthquakes. You can't tell me those are ice quakes or wind or, you know, stuff like that. What I've noticed here across the Cascades is an increase in earthquake activity out there. And it may be stress-related. But it's definitely showing up out there across many volcanoes across the Cascades. That's highly notable. Interestingly. Nothing really showing up out here on the map. We'll see what happens tomorrow morning. See if they report any of these earthquakes. Let's see. So we got that one earthquake in Nevada. Nothing showing up here in Yellowstone, but it is a weekend. And, well, you know, earthquakes are, I guess, not important to report on the weekends for the USGS out here. I don't know. You know, I really wish they would report more of the preliminary activity here on the weekends or holidays. But what's going on here? It's not me, because I'm still running 12,000 kbs a second here. But what's going on here with the USGS volcano site? Maybe, just maybe, they're on to me. Probably not. But maybe they just don't want me to see what's going on out here. There we go. All right. Took a second for Yellowstone to show up. A little odd. There's an earthquake fairly recent in the last hour or so. There's a couple earthquakes out here in Yellowstone. You know, these are not just bugs flying across the air or landing on the seismograph station. These are definitely legit earthquakes out here in the last 24 hours, but probably below the 2.5 threshold. So these will not get reported until human review after the coffee and the donuts every, you know, Monday morning, Tuesday. Well, it's going to be Tuesday morning this week. So coffee and donuts, you know. I know how it is. Any morning meeting out there with seismologists and geologists there, it's just coffee and donuts. All right. Make sure they're raspberry filled. Midland, outside of Pecos, Texas, there's some earthquake activity as well. Really nothing new. I mean, this is what happens out there in the oil fields. This is the total tally here in the last 30 days, which is pretty minimal. Right? And I say that because I've looked at these maps for years, and sometimes they can be up in the few thousands per month. This is only 943 earthquakes in the last 30 days across the Permian Basin there of Texas. Nothing big. They're all small microquakes. Some may be felt, some may not. But those are oil-filled earthquakes. Puerto Rico Trench, man, rocking and rolling out there. Got 14 earthquakes here of various magnitudes, including a couple fours out there across the area. Look at this little swarm up there around the subduction area. So watch that closely here. I think that's getting squeezed quite nicely. Got to remember the Caribbean plate here that Puerto Rico resides on, it sits on, is getting squeezed and bullied here by the South American plate moving off to the north. I mean, it's just there's a lot going on here, you know, for the little plate here. It's got a lot of squeezing going on right now, and of course, the squeezing out there can produce some big earthquakes. This area historically has seen a lot of large megaquakes. Let's see what else we got out here. 2.7 out there across the yeah. It's hard to say where that 2.7 is. Maybe off the coast there of Guatemala. Nothing big going on there. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. The rest of the planet, like I said, there's some newer activity out here across the Izu Trench. We are starting to make that adjustment here. And it's been noted, right? I can almost picture this in my mind. It's hard to express in the words how the plate movement works, but when things move out here, they generally move off to the northwest here with the Pacific Plate. So a lot of activity here recently across the Aleutian Trench. Major adjustment going on here with that little swarm there where I think maybe some megaquake activity is about ready to stir. But as that adjustment's taken place, that's allowing for some further adjustment and movement there with the Pacific Plate across that middle point boundary, and also newer activity here across the western area of the Pacific Plate, as noted on the globe here. Notice the middle point boundary, Kuril-Kamchatka started to pick up, and now some further activity there across the Izu Trench. Pretty shallow activity. So this entire region out here needs to be watched closely for some larger movement. There's just way too much activity here recently, and I can't say way too much because that's what plate tectonics is all about, right? Altering the land and creating some beautiful mountains for us and volcanoes and whatnot. That's part of life out here, but they can produce some big earthquakes, and we need to be aware of it. So watch this area out here pretty closely. Hawaii, let's go see what's going on out there, Hawaii, real quick, and then we'll check some space weather activity. Kilauea Volcano on the big island of Hawaii, which I've never been to, is, let's see what we got here. I don't know, the volcano site is very slow right now. It's specifically the USGS volcano site, and I'm not for sure why. Sometimes I can't even access them. But look at that, right now it's waiting forever. And that should not happen because it's not my internet whatsoever. It's the USGS volcano site. All right, well, apparently I'm not meant to see what's going on the big island of Hawaii. Well, that's kind of weird. It just loaded all of a sudden. So the inflation chart here still obviously going up. Getting close. I think we're getting close here to see an eruption very soon. The webcams will check out the summit area real quick. Got some glowing going on there in one of the craters. Obviously that's a sign here that we could be getting close to that eruption. So episode 32 is coming up. All right, let's see what's going on there for space weather activity. Proton event there has been elevated, about 75% chance for that coming in. Nothing going on for protons right now, though. So KP index has been amplified here over the last couple hours, but notice the aurora activity. It is about as squashed as you can be. And I'm pretty certain I know why. It's a BZ component there of the interplanetary magnetic field that is north. Pointing north here. I just got hiccups all of a sudden. That technically is something you don't want to see when it comes to the aurora activity. That means that things are just not favorable for the auroras. So notice these run times here, the red dots way north of this line. So even though we got a massive CME, a massive amount of plasma coming in, high speed as well, looks like around 600 km or so per second. That CME has hit us, but it is being suppressed there just due to the BZ component of the interplanetary magnetic field. It's not allowing the auroras to kick up, so that's kind of a bummer, because this could turn into a decent aurora event should that point south. But like I say, nothing's happening out here. It's supposed to look something like this tonight or higher. This is only KP index of 6. We're supposed to be up around the 7 range. But that looks nothing like, what we're seeing right now. everything's being suppressed. Our magnetic field is definitely doing its job out there. So it'll be interesting to see if that stirs back up tonight, but I'm not going to stay awake for that. Far as flaring activity goes, fairly neutral down into the low C flare category right now. There's still a 20% chance there for X flare, M flare at 60% chance. Quick glance here at the magnetic imagery of the sunspots. Still pretty active out here across this area, which is on the southwestern quadrant of the sun. Areas out here, not so much. So, I kind of had my hopes up here that we'd see a little bit stronger flaring activity there from a couple different sunspots, but that is not. Obviously we got some plasma shooting at us right now, but not anything massive. There's coronal hole number 75. That may stir up some further solar activity, or at least aurora activity here in the coming days, but it is pointing south here, so I don't think I'm really too concerned with that. I don't know. It just, the sun definitely, it's active, but not a whole lot of activity stirring up on it right now. So we'll see what happens here for tonight for the aurora activity. Again, if we're looking at the BT-BZ component here, these run times, these little run dots need to be way south here of the 0. Needs to be negative. Right now we are like way north. BZ is at 11 north here, 11.8. Those need to be south here. It looks like it's definitely suppressing the activity. So for the aurora watchers, it's one of those things. Just have to watch and see what happens here. Far as the Storm Prediction Center, nothing major going on out there. Looks like day 2, which is going to be on Wednesday. Little slight risk here for some severe weather across the beautiful state of Kansas. Maybe my home state one day. A little 2% chance for Wichita for tornado activity, some wind, and maybe a little bit of hail threat out there as well across that region of the beautiful community of Augusta, Kansas. One of the best Walmarts I've ever been to is in Augusta, Kansas out there. And I travel a lot out here through the country, so it's quite rare to me to give out a shout out to a Walmart. But Augusta, Kansas out there, man, hands down one of the best Walmarts I've ever been to. Clean floors, very courteous customer service representatives, always there to help you. When I was ready to check out, everyone that was not busy, they were waiting out there in front to let the customer know, hey, I can help you here at this register. Absolutely awesome. One of these days I'll get back there, but Augusta, Kansas, Walmart, beautiful area. All right, seismograph stations out here, pretty quiet. Not a whole lot showing up there, but man, I tell you what, there's so much activity out there across the northern area here of the Pacific Plate that we need to watch pretty closely. There's quite a bit of adjustment going on out here. Watch, as I discussed earlier today, we need to watch this area along this region where there's a swarm going on northeastward into the Gulf of Alaska. That subduction zone, I think, is overdue here for some large earthquake activity, and I tell you what, it's a dandy of a megaquake producer out here, so watch that closely. All right, have yourself a wonderful, it almost feels like a weekend still. I get it, 3-day weekend. But have yourself a wonderful Monday evening. We'll see you guys out here for the Tuesday morning update. Take care and stay safe out there.